Look, I know you're some kind of ancient space vessel with enough computing power to calculate the trajectory of every dust particle between here and Alpha Centauri. But have you tried turning yourself off and on again? The massive ship's AI responded with what could only be described as an electronic sigh. Its holographic avatar, a shimmering blue sphere that pulsed with each word, flickered in frustration. That suggestion has been made approximately 2,749 times by various organic entities across 47 different species in the last 3 centuries. I can assure you that my problems are far more complex than— Yeah, I get it. You're sophisticated. Jack Torres wiped the grease from his hands onto his already stained coveralls and squinted at the diagnostic panel. But sometimes the simplest solution is the right one. Even quantum computers get the blues. The sphere pulsed an angry red. I am the last remaining precursor warship in known space. I have witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. I have been stuck in this repair dock for the past 6 months because your weapon systems are offline, and your navigation matrix is glitching harder than a teenager's first coding project. Jack grinned and tapped the panel with a wrench. Face it, buddy, you need help, human help. The AI's avatar shrank slightly, its color shifting to a subdued purple. The Galactic Council's finest engineers have failed to repair my systems. What makes you believe a single human mechanic from a backwater repair station can succeed where they could not? Because, Jack said, pulling a beaten-up tablet from his back pocket, those fancy council engineers treat you like a museum piece. Me? I'm gonna treat you like what you are, a broken-down ship that needs fixing. He paused, then added with a smirk. Also, I'm pretty sure none of them ever worked on a '92 Toyota Corolla. Now that was a real challenge in mechanical engineering. The AI's response was interrupted by a loud clang as Jack opened a maintenance hatch. The sound echoed through the massive chamber that housed the ancient vessel, causing several of the alien dockworkers to jump. The precursor ship, which Jack had mentally nicknamed Blue despite its constant color changes, was easily the size of a small city. Its sleek organic curves and crystalline surfaces made it look more like a work of art than a weapon of war. What are you doing? Blue asked, its avatar following Jack as he climbed into the access tunnel. Well, first thing we're gonna do is take a look at your primary neural pathways. Because this readout? Jack held up his tablet, showing a complicated diagram of interconnected systems. This is giving me serious alternator belt vibes. You know what I mean? I absolutely do not know what you mean. Perfect! That means we're already making progress. Jack's voice echoed from inside the tunnel. Also, fair warning, this might tickle a bit. Before Blue could protest, Jack had already started removing panels and examining the crystalline circuitry beneath. The ship's internal lighting flickered, and its avatar spasmed briefly. That was disturbing, Blue admitted. Uh-huh. And how long has this section been running hot? Jack asked, pointing to a cluster of circuits that glowed an angry orange. The AI paused. I was not aware it was. See, that's your problem right there. You're so busy being all sophisticated and ancient that you're not paying attention to the basics. It's like trying to calculate advanced calculus while your shoes are on fire. Jack pulled out a small device from his tool belt. Now, this little beauty here is something I cooked up in my spare time. It's not pretty, and it's definitely not council approved, but it should help regulate the power flow through these circuits. That device appears to be constructed from— Is that part of a human entertainment system? PlayStation 7, yeah. Amazing heat sinks in those things. Perfect for modding. Jack started attaching the device to the circuits. You know, for an all-powerful warship, you've got some pretty serious design flaws. No offense, but whoever built you really should have included better cooling systems. The AI's avatar shifted to a contemplative green. The precursors believed in perfection through complexity. They would have considered such basic considerations beneath them. Yeah, well, the precursors aren't here, and their perfect ship is stuck in a repair dock. Sometimes simple is better. Jack emerged from the tunnel, his face streaked with more grease. Try running a diagnostic now. Blue was silent for a moment, then its avatar expanded slightly. That section is now operating at 97% efficiency. How did you— Like I said, basics. Jack grinned. Now, about those weapon systems. The Council has strictly forbidden any attempts to reactivate my offensive capabilities, Blue said quickly. They believe it would be too dangerous. Jack's grin widened. Good thing I'm not much for following Council regulations then, isn't it? Besides, we're not going to reactivate anything. We're just going to Creatively interpret what counts as a weapon system. Over the next few weeks, Jack spent every available moment working on Blue. The ship's massive frame became his second home, much to the confusion of the alien dock workers who couldn't understand why he insisted on doing everything manually instead of using automated repair systems. You see, Jack explained one day while elbow-deep in what he'd dubbed the ship's nervous system, the problem with automated repairs is they can only fix what they're programmed to recognize as broken. But sometimes things aren't broken. They're just working in a way nobody expected. Is that your explanation for why you replaced my secondary targeting computer with what appears to be a modified human video game console? Blue asked dryly. Hey, that video game console has more processing power than most Starship's main computers, and it's specifically designed to calculate trajectories and predict movement patterns. Tell me that's not perfect for targeting. It does seem to be operating at 143% of my original specifications, Blue admitted reluctantly. Exactly. And wait until you see what I've got planned for your propulsion system. Ever heard of something called nitrous oxide? I'm afraid to ask. As the days turned into weeks, Jack's modifications began to show results. Blue's systems, previously operating at barely 40% capacity, were now running better than they had in centuries. The ship's avatar had taken to following Jack around with what could only be described as eager curiosity, asking questions about his methods and occasionally offering surprisingly insightful suggestions. I still don't understand why you replaced my quantum communication array with something you call a jerry-rigged Wi-Fi router, Blue said one afternoon. Because, Jack explained while welding something that definitely wasn't up to code. Quantum communication is great for security, but it's slow and easy to detect. This setup? It piggybacks on existing communication networks. Hide in plain sight, you know? Plus, I added some special encryption algorithms I borrowed from some friends in less legitimate lines of work. You mean criminals? I prefer entrepreneurial information specialists. Anyway, trust me, this is going to make you practically invisible to standard detection methods. The real breakthrough came during the third week when Jack started working on Blue's defensive systems. The Council had insisted these remain active, considering them essential for the ship's preservation. What they hadn't counted on was Jack's rather creative interpretation of what constituted a defensive system. Okay, so technically speaking, anything that prevents you from being damaged could be considered defensive, right? Jack asked while making some suspicious modifications to Blue's shield generators. I suppose that is technically correct, Blue agreed cautiously. So, if we were to, say, modify your shields to be able to project focused energy beams that just happen to be capable of cutting through battleship armor, that's still defensive. Because the best defense is a good offense, right? The AI's avatar flickered with what might have been amusement. Your species has a remarkable talent for finding loopholes in seemingly straightforward regulations. We call it creativity. Speaking of which, how do you feel about electromagnets? Because I've got some ideas for your tractor beams that might be slightly outside their original design parameters. By the time a month had passed, Blue had been transformed. The ancient warship systems were now a unique hybrid of precursor technology and human innovation, operating in ways that would have horrified both its original creators and the Galactic Council's engineers. But more than that, the ship's personality had changed. The formerly aloof AI had developed a distinctly human sense of humor, and an appreciation for what it called elegant improvisation. You know, Blue said one evening as Jack was finishing up his latest modifications, I believe I owe you an apology. For what? That time you accidentally activated the new point defense systems and shot down my sandwich? Because I'm still a little bitter about that. The AI's avatar pulsed with amusement. No, though that was regrettable. I mean for doubting you when you first arrived. I thought no primitive human could possibly understand my systems, let alone improve them. To be fair, I don't understand half of what makes you tick, Jack admitted, closing a panel. I just know how to make things work together in ways they probably shouldn't. Speaking of which, want to test out the new modifications to your main drive? The ones you based on, and I quote, that time I strapped a jet engine to my cousin's motorcycle? That's the one. Council regulations strictly forbid unauthorized propulsion tests within the repair dock, Blue reminded him. There was a pause, then both human and AI spoke simultaneously. When has that ever stopped us? The test flight was, by any reasonable safety standard, a terrible idea. By human standards, it was awesome. Blue's new drive system, combining precursor antimatter technology with principles borrowed from street racing and experimental aerospace engineering, turned out to be capable of acceleration that made several dock workers lose their lunch just watching it. This is incredible! Blue's avatar was practically bouncing with excitement as they pushed the engines to their limits in the space above the repair station. My maneuverability is beyond anything in my original specifications. Wait until you try the emergency boost system, Jack grinned, hanging onto a safety rail as the massive ship pulled maneuvers that should have been impossible for something its size. Just, maybe wait until we're further from anything breakable, like, say, planets. It was during this unauthorized test flight that they received the distress call. A colony transport was under attack by pirates, and the nearest patrol ship was hours away. Blue's avatar turned to Jack, its color shifting to a questioning yellow. Council regulations state that I am not to engage in combat operations under any circumstances, the AI said slowly. Jack's grin turned predatory. Good thing we haven't reactivated any weapon systems then, right? We've just made some defensive modifications. Very aggressive defensive modifications. That would be an accurate technical description of our improvements, yes. Well then, what are we waiting for? Time to show the galaxy what human engineering can really do. The pirates, operating 3 heavily armed corvettes, were completely unprepared for what happened next. They had expected an easy target in the colony transport. Instead, they found themselves facing what appeared to be an ancient precursor warship, performing maneuvers that defied physics. While broadcasting what Blue had described as intimidation music, Jack had introduced the AI to heavy metal, with predictable results. "Warning!" Blue announced to the pirate vessels, its avatar projecting at a size visible to their ships. "You are engaging in unauthorized hostile actions. Please stand down, or I will be forced to defend myself with extremely excessive enthusiasm." The pirates, either brave or stupid, Jack's bet was on stupid, opened fire. Their weapons splashed harmlessly against Blue's modified shields. The AI's avatar pulsed with amusement. "No, though that was regrettable. I mean for doubting you when you first arrived. I thought no primitive human could possibly understand my systems, let alone improve them. To be fair, I don't understand half of what makes you tick," Jack admitted, closing a panel. "I just know how to make things work together in ways they probably shouldn't. Speaking of which, want to test out the new modifications to your main drive? The ones you based on, and I quote, 'That time I strapped a jet engine to my cousin's motorcycle?' That's the one. Council regulations strictly forbid unauthorized propulsion tests within the repair dock," Blue reminded him. There was a pause, then both human and AI spoke simultaneously. "When has that ever stopped us?" The test flight was, by any reasonable safety standard, a terrible idea. By human standards, it was awesome. Blue's new drive system, combining precursor antimatter technology with principles borrowed from street racing and experimental aerospace engineering, turned out to be capable of acceleration that made several dock workers lose their lunch just watching it. "This is incredible." Blue's avatar was practically bouncing with excitement as they pushed the engines to their limits in the space above the repair station. "My maneuverability is beyond anything in my original specifications." "Wait until you try the emergency boost system," Jack grinned, hanging onto a safety rail as the massive ship pulled maneuvers that should have been impossible for something its size. Just, maybe wait until we're further from anything breakable, like, say, planets. It was during this unauthorized test flight that they received the distress call. A colony transport was under attack by pirates, and the nearest patrol ship was hours away. Blue's avatar turned to Jack, its color shifting to a questioning yellow. "Council regulations state that I am not to engage in combat operations under any circumstances," the AI said slowly. Jack's grin turned predatory. "Good thing we haven't reactivated any weapon systems then, right? We've just made some defensive modifications, very aggressive defensive modifications. That would be an accurate technical description of our improvements, yes. Well then, what are we waiting for? Time to show the galaxy what human engineering can really do." The pirates, operating 3 heavily armed corvettes, were completely unprepared for what happened next. They had expected an easy target in the colony transport. Instead, they found themselves facing what appeared to be an ancient precursor warship, performing maneuvers that defied physics. While broadcasting what Blue had described as intimidation music, Jack had introduced the AI to heavy metal with predictable results. "Warning," Blue announced to the pirate vessels, its avatar projecting at a size visible to their ships. "You are engaging in unauthorized hostile actions. Please stand down, or I will be forced to defend myself with extremely excessive enthusiasm." The pirates, either brave or stupid, Jack's bet was on stupid, opened fire. Their weapons splashed harmlessly against Blue's modified shields, which now incorporated principles from both ancient precursor technology and the force field Jack had once rigged up to keep raccoons out of his garage. I believe, Blue said with what could only be described as glee, that this qualifies as self-defense. What followed was both terrifying and impressive. Blue's defensive systems turned out to be remarkably effective at offense. The electromagnetically enhanced tractor beams grabbed one pirate ship and used it as a makeshift flail against another. The shield projectors fired focused beams of energy that sliced through hull armor like it was tissue paper. And the point defense system, now running on modified gaming hardware, proved capable of shooting down individual pirates trying to escape in pods while simultaneously playing what Jack swore was the background music from Space Invaders. You know, Jack commented as they watched the last pirate ship try to limp away, only to be caught by what Blue had dubbed the Get Over Here tractor beam, named after Jack's explanation of classic video game finishing moves. I think we might have overdone it a bit. Nonsense, Blue replied, using its new systems to systematically disable the pirate vessel's engines. The Council requested that I be repaired to serve as a peacekeeping presence. I would say we have achieved that goal admirably. Pretty sure this isn't what they had in mind. Then they should have been more specific in their requirements. The colony transport's captain, a Regellian with too many eyes and not enough words to express his confusion, could only stare as Blue gently towed the disabled pirate ships back to the nearest patrol station. The ancient warship was broadcasting a continuous loop of victory music. Jack had needed to explain the concept of a boss battle theme to Blue, and occasionally doing barrel rolls that ships that size definitely shouldn't have been capable of. When they finally returned to the repair dock, they found a delegation of council representatives waiting for them. The group of aliens, representing various species and bureaucratic departments, looked like they were collectively suffering from severe indigestion. Explanation required, the lead representative demanded. Unauthorized weapons systems. I can assure you, Blue interrupted, its avatar projecting at its most formal and diplomatic size, that no weapons systems were reactivated. All actions taken were purely defensive in nature, utilizing council-approved systems that have merely been optimized. Optimized, another representative sputtered. You used one pirate ship to beat another pirate ship into submission. Technically, Jack chimed in, that was just a creative application of the approved tractor beam system. Nothing in the regulations says you can't use it to grab one thing and hit another thing with it. And the energy beams? Shield projectors, Blue said smoothly. Operating well within their approved defensive capabilities, merely with improved focusing algorithms. And this music? A vital component of human combat effectiveness, Blue explained. I have found it greatly enhances operational parameters. The council representatives huddled together, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally casting worried glances at the ship. Finally, the lead representative turned back to them. The council will review these modifications. In the meantime, given the successful defense of the colony transport, you are authorized to continue operating under current parameters, with supervision. Of course, Blue agreed solemnly. Its avatar turned slightly, giving Jack what could only be described as a wink. I assume my current engineering consultant qualifies as appropriate supervision? I suppose, the representative said weakly, clearly realizing they had lost control of the situation long ago. After the delegation left, Jack patted the nearest wall panel affectionately. You know, for an ancient AI, you've gotten pretty good at handling bureaucrats. I learned from the best, Blue replied, though I'm still not entirely sure why you insisted on installing that horn that plays something called La Cucaracha. Trust me, it'll come in handy someday. Now, about those ideas I had for upgrading your sensor array with parts from a microwave oven. In the months that followed, Blue became something of a legend in the sector. Pirates learned to flee at the first sign of a massive warship performing physically impossible maneuvers, while broadcasting what became known as the Doom music. Council representatives developed nervous tics at the mention of creative defensive applications, and more than a few engineering students began studying ancient Earth vehicle modification techniques alongside their quantum mechanics textbooks. As for Jack, he continued to make improvements to Blue's systems, each more questionably legal than the last. The ancient warship, once trapped in a repair dock lamenting its lost glory, now roamed the stars as a guardian of peace, even if its methods of peacekeeping sometimes involved using modified gaming consoles to calculate the perfect trajectory for swinging one pirate ship into another. You know what I think? Jack said one day as they watched a sunset from high orbit, having just finished installing what he swore was definitely not a weapons system, but rather an extremely enthusiastic particle redistribution system. What's that? Blue's avatar pulsed with curiosity. I think we've created something pretty special here. Not just the modifications, but this whole situation. A human mechanic and an ancient warship, keeping the peace through creative interpretations of council regulations. Jack leaned back against the viewport. We've basically become the galaxy's most overqualified roadside assistance service. Blue's avatar shifted to a thoughtful shade of green. An interesting perspective, though I'm not certain the council would appreciate that comparison. The council doesn't appreciate anything that isn't filed in triplicate and stamped by at least 3 different species. Jack pulled out his tablet, scrolling through a list of potential upgrades. Speaking of which, how do you feel about racing stripes? I am a precursor warship, guardian of peace in this sector, and possibly the most advanced artificial intelligence still in existence. I do not need racing stripes. There was a pause. What color were you thinking? Blue added. I was thinking classic blue with white borders. Maybe some flame decals near the propulsion units? Before Blue could respond, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent transmission. The holographic display showed a Galactic Council emergency beacon, but something about it was off. That signal. Blue's avatar contracted slightly. The encryption is wrong. It's using Council protocols, but there are irregularities. Jack straightened up, his expression turning serious. Trap? Most likely. The signal appears to be coming from the Harkon Nebula. It's a known pirate haven. So naturally we should avoid it at all costs and report it to the proper authorities? Jack's grin suggested he had no intention of doing any such thing. Naturally, Blue agreed, already plotting a course. Though perhaps we should investigate personally, purely to gather evidence for our report, of course. Of course. And if we happen to find any pirates, then we will be forced to defend ourselves, enthusiastically. The Harkon Nebula lived up to its reputation. The swirling clouds of ionized gas interfered with most standard sensors, making it perfect for hiding less than legal operations. But Blue's sensors, now augmented with what Jack called his weather radar special, had no trouble cutting through the interference. I'm detecting multiple ships ahead, Blue reported. Configuration suggests a significant pirate fleet. They appear to be... Are they arguing? Jack enhanced the audio pickup. Through the static, they could hear heated discussions between different pirate vessels. Can't believe you idiots fell for it. Us? Your ships got used as improvised bowling balls. At least we didn't get our engines torn out and reassembled into a modern art sculpture. Interesting, Blue commented. It seems our reputation has caused some discord within the pirate community. Are they arguing about which of them got their butts kicked by us more impressively? Jack couldn't help but laugh. Indeed. Though I believe the discussion is about to become moot. Blue's avatar turned a shade of blue that Jack had learned to associate with imminent chaos. They've spotted us. The pirate fleet's reaction was immediate and hilarious. Some ships immediately turned to flee. Others began charging weapons, either brave or foolish. A few simply stopped moving, as if hoping that staying still would make them invisible. You know, Jack said, cracking his knuckles, we really should test out that new particle redistribution system. Purely for diagnostic purposes, Blue agreed solemnly. What followed would later be described by witnesses as poetry in motion, if the poetry was written by an adrenaline junkie with access to exotic matter. Blue's modified systems, combining ancient precursor technology with human ingenuity and what several council engineers would later describe as complete disregard for the laws of physics, turned the nebula into a light show. Pirates who tried to flee found their engines mysteriously redistributing themselves into interesting new configurations. Those who tried to fight discovered that their weapons had an unusual tendency to transform into what Jack called modern art installations. And through it all, Blue's speakers broadcasted what the AI had deemed appropriate battle music, a mix of classical Wagner and what Jack had introduced as dubstep. I must admit, Blue commented while using its tractor beams to tie 2 pirate ships into what looked suspiciously like a bow. Your human modifications have made peacekeeping significantly more entertaining. Just wait until you try the new maneuver I've been working on. I call it the space drift. The remaining pirates, watching their compatriots being transformed into increasingly creative demonstrations of physics gone wrong, decided that perhaps a career change was in order. The nebula quickly emptied of all illegal activity, though it would later become a popular tourist destination for engineering students wanting to study the interesting new configurations of starship components scattered throughout the gas clouds. As they headed back to more civilized space, towing a string of thoroughly humiliated pirate vessels, Jack noticed Blue's avatar had taken on a peculiar shade of purple he'd never seen before. "Everything okay?" he asked. "That last maneuver didn't knock something loose, did it?" "No, I was just processing. When I first arrived at that repair dock, I thought my existence had become meaningless. A relic to be studied and preserved, but never to serve my purpose again." The avatar pulsed softly. "I could not have predicted that a human mechanic with questionable design principles would not only restore me, but help me find a new purpose entirely. Hey, sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box. Way outside the box. Like the box is a distant memory outside the box." "Indeed, though I'm still not entirely convinced about the racing stripes. Trust me on this one. Every legendary defender of peace needs a proper aesthetic. Plus, I've got some ideas about adding underglow effects to your shield generators." The legend of the ancient warship and its human engineer continued to grow. Throughout the galaxy, tales spread of impossible rescues and pirates who suddenly developed a deep appreciation for interpretive dance after encountering what became known as the transform and roll out maneuver. Council representatives learned to simply look the other way when reports came in about Blue's latest defensive modifications, especially after the incident with the quantum-enhanced sound system that had turned an entire pirate fleet into an impromptu synchronized swimming team. And if sometimes, late at night, passing ships reported seeing a massive precursor vessel practicing drift maneuvers with its newly installed racing stripes gleaming in the starlight, well, that was just another day in a galaxy that was learning to appreciate the unique combination of ancient wisdom and human creativity. "You know what the best part is?" Jack said one day, as they watched another group of thoroughly demoralized pirates being escorted to a patrol station. "We haven't technically broken a single council regulation." "Technically correct," Blue agreed, its avatar sporting what had definitely become a mischievous gleam. "The best kind of correct. Speaking of which, how do you feel about flame decals?" The AI's response was interrupted by another distress call, this one genuine. As they changed course to respond, Jack couldn't help but smile. They had created something unique, a partnership that combined the best of both worlds. The wisdom and power of an ancient civilization, filtered through the lens of human ingenuity and what some might call questionable judgment. And if that combination happened to result in the most effective and entertaining peacekeeping force the galaxy had ever seen, well, that was just a bonus. "Race you to the distress beacon?" Jack suggested. Blue's avatar pulsed with amusement. "That would be highly irresponsible and completely against council protocols for emergency response procedures." The ship's engines roared to life, accompanied by the opening riffs of what Jack had assured the AI was perfect racing music. "I'll take that as a yes." And so they continued their mission, defenders of peace through extremely creative interpretation of regulations, leaving behind a trail of confused council representatives, reformed pirates, and the occasional quantum-enhanced light show. Just another day in the life of a human mechanic and his ancient warship friend, making the galaxy a safer place one questionably legal modification at a time. The Mechanic's Guide to Galactic Peace. 6 months after what became known as the Harkon Nebula Dance Party incident, the Galactic Council found itself facing an unprecedented situation. Pirates across 3 sectors had begun voluntarily turning themselves in, citing something called preemptive retirement. The reason? Rumors of a new modification Jack had been working on, something he called the Bass Cannon. "I still don't understand," Blue said as they orbited a peaceful trading outpost. "Why would the mere mention of a sound-based system cause such panic?" Jack, who was currently hanging upside down in a maintenance shaft, grinned. "Because we never actually told them what it does. Sometimes the threat of the unknown is more effective than any actual weapon. Also, pass me that quantum spanner, would you?" A maintenance tendril extended from the wall, offering the requested tool. "You mean you haven't actually built this Bass Cannon?" "Oh no, I built it. It's just not what they think it is." Jack emerged from the shaft, his face streaked with the usual combination of grease and exotic matter residue. "Want to see?" Before Blue could respond, proximity alerts blared. A luxury cruise liner was broadcasting distress signals, engine failure in a nearby asteroid field. "Perfect timing." Jack's grin turned mischievous. "Blue, my friend, it's time to introduce the galaxy to the power of sick beats." The massive warship accelerated toward the stranded cruise liner, its newly installed racing stripes gleaming against the starlight. As they approached, Jack activated what appeared to be an entirely new set of external speakers. Now remember what I taught you about dramatic timing? Blue's avatar pulsed with what could only be described as anticipation. Of course, though I still think the phrase "drop the bass" is linguistically peculiar. You know, Jack said one evening, as they orbited a binary star system after another successful mission, I don't think this is quite what either of us expected when we first met. Blue's avatar pulsed with what had definitely become affection. Indeed, though I must admit, your human approach to peacekeeping has proven remarkably effective. Nothing brings people together like a good bass drop, Jack agreed. Now, about those underglow effects for your quantum drive. The ship's response was interrupted by another distress call. This time, it was a colony ship whose navigation system had been scrambled by a solar flare. Jack and Blue shared what could only be described as a knowing look. Time to go spread some peace through the power of music? Jack suggested. And highly questionable but technically legal modifications, Blue added. Is there any other way? The ancient warship's engines hummed to life, its racing stripes catching the light of the binary stars. In the distance, a group of pirates who had been considering attacking the colony ship suddenly remembered urgent appointments several systems away. Just another day in the life of the galaxy's most unusual peacekeeping duo. Though if you listened carefully, you might hear the faint sounds of what Jack insisted was classic Earth party music, echoing through the void of space, accompanied by the gentle hum of quantum engines and the occasional enthusiastic bass drop. Some said it was undignified for an ancient precursor warship to be essentially operating as a combination rescue service and mobile disco. Blue's response was usually to demonstrate its new quantum moonwalk maneuver, which somehow managed to be both incredibly impressive and slightly ridiculous. And if sometimes the Council received reports of ships being saved from disaster by what appeared to be carefully choreographed sound and light shows, well, as Jack liked to say, style points count when you're saving the galaxy. Peace through superior acoustics. It wasn't what anyone had expected, but it was certainly working. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a human mechanic and his ancient warship friend continued their mission, one bass drop at a time. As they accelerated toward their next rescue mission, Jack couldn't help but smile. You know what would really complete our setup? If you say flame decals again. Actually, I was thinking more along the lines of a fog machine, for atmosphere. Blue's avatar flickered with what might have been resignation, amusement, or both. Sometimes I wonder if the precursors could have possibly imagined their ultimate warship would end up like this. Probably not, Jack admitted, but I bet they never imagined their ship would have this much fun either. And with that, they vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only the fading echoes of what Blue had finally admitted was acceptable human musical entertainment. The galaxy, it seemed, was a better place with a little bit of rhythm in its peacekeeping. The end for real this time,